Dave. Let's have a roll call.
Becky Schaefer.
Here.
Commissioner Parrish.
Here.
Doran. Commissioner Polly.
Here.
Vaca.
Here.
Alderman Strelchuk.
Here.
Avondroth.
Here. We have a quorum. First item is our minutes of March 11th meeting.
Move approval. Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the minutes are approved. The consent agenda has two items. Number one, newcomer. The applicant is seeking certified survey map approval for a two-lot land division for the property at 11361 West Freistadt Road. Second item is Gabor Design for Kelly and Mike Grebe. The applicant is seeking setback waiver approval for a proposed 210 square foot portico addition at the front of the existing house for the property at 11417 North Spring Avenue.
Move approval of the consent. Second.
Motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Consent agenda is approved. We have a public hearing. Public hearing for MSI General for Quality Auto Body. The applicant is seeking expansion of non-conforming use, building and site plan amendment, and sign waiver approval for renovations to the interior and exterior of the building for the property located at 11065 North Cedarburg Road.
Motion to go into public. Second.
Motion and a second to go into public hearing. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, we're now in public hearing. Does anyone wish to address the commission on this item? Motion and second to close public hearing. All those in favor say aye. Public hearing is now closed.
I'm not sure if it's here or not.
Applicant here.
A little different of a situation. This is an expansion of this is a property at 065 North Seaburg Road. This is a body shop. It received approval for conditional use back in 1970. It's been existent since then with auto repair and auto body. In 2008, we rezoned the property town center non-conforming. The applicant is looking to do substantial renovations to the building that are beyond value, so this figures as use in front of the planning. Staff is supportive of the overall desire to improve the building. The current use could remain in effect as long as there was someone willing to use that building for auto body, so we felt that since we were going to entertain that use there, we might as well try to make the building as in keeping with the town center as much as possible. So what I have in front of you is the rendering of the proposal. What they're adding, and I'll show you some pictures of the existing as well. They're adding metal wall panels, lap siding, and aluminum storefront windows to brighten up the front of the building. The request also is for a sign waiver. The plan shows two wall signs, one on the east, one on the north elevation, as well as one on the smokestack. In terms of site improvements, there's a couple minor things that the applicant's proposing, which I think will have a good impact on the site. They're showing a new landscaped island in this general location here, as well as one here. There are probably some conflicting plans in the packet. We did have a discussion about this island here. We both agreed to pull it back. It's a very narrow access point to get to this overhead door, so we felt that while there's a need for an island there, that it was sticking out a little bit too far and it was going to be really difficult to get cars in and out of that access point. So, but we are supportive of the additional islands in the front. It'll create a little bit more of a street edge there. That portion of Cedarburg Road is basically gravel, pavement and gravel, and it blends into parking. So it's kind of creates a little bit of an edge on this property. So overall, we're supportive of that. The plan also includes some new wall packs. The wall packs are full cutoff in accordance with our code, but some of the dispersion readings were a little higher than our code requires. So I did talk to the applicant, say we'll have to adjust those readings to get it down to our code levels at the property line. Again, there's some minor landscaping. They are adding a street tree. We always try to get some street trees somewhere. The only location was right in this area here. It's shown as 2-inch, I believe, in the plan, so we're requesting that it be changed to a 3-inch diameter. We also did a site compliance visit to the site. I did notice there's a dumpster enclosure in the back that's not it's a dumpster not in an enclosure or screened from the neighboring property, so we added that as a condition as well. The one issue that we kind of had to look at a little bit closer was the actual sign waiver request. They're requesting, again, 3 signs. This is a single-tenant building, so they are allowed 1 wall sign. The request is for the 3. The 2 in the front are basically the same argument that we've heard with Associated Bank with regard to having visibility from that traffic coming from the north and the orientation of the building. With Associated, we felt that there was an opportunity for a monument sign. Here, it probably doesn't have that same ability to put a monument sign because of the tightness of that building to the road. But the town center is the one district that allows actually a projecting sign. So if you had a projecting sign kind of on this elevation here, you would capture both sides pretty well, and it would be very visible from both directions. They would also need a sign waiver with regard to the size of those signs. Our sign code allows signs at a certain percentage of the building, and since this is a relatively small building, that would mean relatively small sizes. They're proposing a 27 square foot sign on each facade. It's 18.5 and 12.65 was what the code would allow based on that percentage. Just for perspective, if this was a multi-tenant building, they'd be allowed a 30 square foot sign. So we feel that the 22 square or the 27 square foot signs they're proposing are in scale with the building and look appropriate, but we do not recommend both the signs. In terms of the smokestack, we didn't know there was another smokestack available in town center, so we were kind of like, oh, okay, we'll turn this into like a town center kind of signifying element, but they're showing just basically some letters on the smokestack, so if we're gonna go that route, we would prefer to see the same ghost painting that we did on the St. Paul's building, so we're excited for that to occur on this building, as well as kind of like the bookmark end of the town center as you go down Cedarburg Road. So with that, I also have some pictures of the existing building just to show you the kind of the night and day changes they're proposing. The existing building, as you can see in the front, has pretty much a sea of asphalt with no definition, and you can see the old mansard shake roof on the building. It's pretty dated, and we're excited that the applicant is willing to invest in the building and make it look a lot closer to our town center guidelines than the existing building. So with that, we recommend approval.
Thank you, Jack.
Thanks.
You must be the applicant.
Applicant's agent, yes, Eric Newman with MSI General.
Okay. Is there anything you'd wish to add?
We have reviewed all the conditions of approval that Jack had listed, and we are good with all of them. The smokestack, if we do that, would be a ghosted type paint versus a sign. So that we appreciate that being included in the recommendation. We do have issue though with the signage, and we do want to talk about our request for variance to put the 2 signs up, mainly because, again, the position of the building on site, the proximity of the building to the road, the angle of the road, and the ability to really capture traffic. Seeing the sign, if you're coming south down Cedarburg, if you put it on the east elevation, you won't see it till you're past the driveway. If you're coming north on Cedarburg and you put it on the other wall, you won't see it till you're past as well. So in either case, you'd end up turning around. We feel based on the improvements that they're spending on the project itself and the ability to access the site, that putting 2 signs up makes logical sense. It may not be the letter of the law, but I think it meets the spirit of the law in our opinion. So we would like to discuss that with the commission.
Okay. Commissioners. Mr. Schaefer.
Hi. I really like the design of the building. I like the materials. I think it's a vast improvement over the existing building. I didn't even know there was a smokestack there, actually.
Yes.
As far as the sign goes, we've had a lot of problem with signs, and I think we pretty much, or this is my opinion, we have to stick with 1 sign. If you projected it, I think you would see it from both directions. If it's on the north side, you won't see it at all, but I think on the east side, it'll be quite prominent, and I don't think you'll lose any customers because of that. So I don't know how the rest of the panel feels, but that's what I think.
So the smokestack was there before, right?
Yes,
It's existing.
correct.
Okay. Because if it was a new smokestack for a smokestack sign, I would ask to have that removed. I,
And actually, if, in order to make this, the shadowing or the smokestack sign or lettering actually work, we really have to work with We Energies because the power comes to the smokestack via overhead line, as well as Spectrum's bringing their data and telephone service over to there. So it either needs to be buried or moved or something to really make it pop. And that's why, you know, we'd like to do it, but there's things that have to happen to make that work.
I know that you've been there for years, or your applicant has been there for years. I know that they're a quality company, and I'm really glad to see them reinvest in
Well,
Mequon.
this will be a new owner.
New owner?
Yes, so.
Okay.
It's a new owner who has a quality auto body. Actually, Roxanne Stice is with me today. She's the owner of the company with her
Great.
husband, Steve. They have an operation on 6th Street and 6th and Layton, between Layton and Edgerton in Milwaukee.
Okay, cool.
And they are purchasing this building and the business from the Amport brothers.
Okay. I really like the building. I would agree with Commissioner Schaefer that on the signage. I am comfortable up to 30 square feet based on the multi-tenant capability of signage in that location. You know, I think that going to 18 square feet would be a little too small, and if we do stick with the wall signs, I just don't think that would fit in with the side of the building. I would prefer to see something, you're allowed something projecting out. I'd prefer to see something like that. Again, what we're doing is we're going through the signage and we're going through why you need it versus why you want it. You know what I mean? You want it because it fits the building, it fits on the side of the building. And I agree with you and anybody else that comes forward to say it looks nice the way that it is. However, the code and the standard is that you have another media available where you can project the sign out and you can be visible from both sides. And I think, you know, with your ability within the company and what sign makers can do these days, you can have a really great looking sign that would be out in the front. It would still draw attention to your business. It would still drive traffic from both the east and the west. I do know that that's like kind of just right after a merge spot, so I know it is difficult. But I'll mirror, you know, what Commissioner Schaefer says about the single sign on that. I'm not in love with the smokestack element. I thought that was the one exception we did for St. Paul, not thinking there were any more. I think that kind of fit the size of that development, and that was kind of one feature on a very, very old building that was being rehabbed and maintained. So I was supportive of it there. I don't know that there's a need for it here. I'm not pulling it from a motion, but I'm open to listen to what the other commissioners feel about it.
Commissioner Parrish.
Thank you. Thanks to the applicant. Out of all the issues on the agenda, I have the most thoughts about this one. I've already discussed with staff, so sorry you have to hear this again. So my job as the real estate broker on this commission is more of the land use planning perspective and that I could bring to the table. And so this did raise some concerns for me from a land use planning perspective. Whenever you have a non-conforming use, we had this discussion last month when Becky was asking about the houses on Donges Bay Road, and essentially we'll never allow more houses to be built on Donges Bay Road. We're gonna wait for those things to burn down or become obsolete. So we're not gonna double down on Donges Bay Road by allowing more houses in front of all the commercial. Then there's a large yellow industrial building on Port Washington Road. That was another example. And we would never, ever allow them to expand that building on that road. So what are we gonna do when Rick's Auto at the corner, when they're trying to sell their business or what have you. So basically, we're always going to have auto in the town center district. We might as well look at the zoning code for that. I do have a problem with the condition of the property. I mean, so essentially they let it just get to this point after all these years. And I think the seller is being rewarded for it. I'm really impressed with the applicant and the investment that they're willing to make. But they really just let it get run down to this point, and now we're doubling down on an auto use. And it's just always gonna be an auto use there. I don't feel that we're killing market value if we were to not approve this. First of all, the auto use would continue there. It's not like that's not in danger. This buyer can continue to do auto, and staff's point was great that, you can do the same use without improving the property there. And that's the danger, that if we don't approve this use, this is our one chance to fix it up nice, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the discussion we had earlier today. I think the other issue is, and we didn't probably discuss it, I just didn't have time to respond, was that if we were doing something to the improvements of this building that made it more likely to be an auto body, I think what they're doing here could translate into different use. With the front entryway and the windows, some of that could be converted into a different use, just as you said, the existing one could be. So I don't think we're adding more to the building to make it cemented more as a auto repair shop forever. If we were adding more bays to it, or if we were adding, spray booths and things like that, then I think you are going down that path. But
Are you aware if they're gonna be using the TIF monies for this project?
I don't think they would qualify. There has been a request, but I don't see how they would qualify.
Okay. Are we able to limit conditional use lengths? So
Excuse me?
put a limit, so they have to come back in like 10 years, or is it, in Mequon, is it just a permanent
Conditional use, you typically, it runs with the land as long as there's always that qualifier in there. If there's an issue with noise or other, fumes, things like that, we can always revisit it, but.
Okay. Are they gonna be able to park cars or really anything for greater than 24 hours? Or do we need to add that into
I did add a condition about having any, I think it got in the final code, I just want to make sure, but I did add a condition in there wouldn't be any outside storage of junk vehicles or car parts. Yeah, number 2, I did add that in there. Now, if you want to go a little bit further than that, I mean, there is a large area in the back that has spaces there for probably 7, 8 cars. I'm assuming that's where they would keep a majority of the cars they're working on, and the front would be for parking only.
Well, I think we should consider a 24-hour window for any outside storage, so something can't just be parked there and sit there for months. It has to rotate and circle in and out. And then the architects are quiet on the design. They say they like it, so I'll be quiet on design. I won't comment on that because I respect their profession. So thank you for listening, and I don't know what I'm gonna vote yet.
Thank you, Brian. Anyone else?
Can we define junk vehicles? That was one of the questions that I forgot to ask earlier. Junk vehicle,
Well, typically in our code, it's vehicles that have to be licensed, registered, and operable. And I know that's still kind of maybe a little bit nebulous with regard to operable, but it's somewhat of a judgment call. I mean, we have the ability to go to a site, and if we make the judgment that it's not an operable vehicle, we can ask them to move it. And we do that on not just with this type of use, but for any residential property for that matter. So, I mean, if you want to clean that up a little bit, make it a little bit more detailed, we can, put a condition in that all cars being worked on have to be in the rear of the site. I mean, that's another option as well. I think they were going to plan on doing that anyway, but.
I think I'd prefer to see that in there, and I'd prefer for staff to call out exactly what they're defining as a junk vehicle, just for the minutes, if nothing else, so we can refer back. If it does become a problem, we can refer to the minutes of this meeting and saying, okay, junk vehicles equal vehicles that are inoperable, but then you can start up a car with the whole front end smashed in that you couldn't legally drive on the street, but you can drive in the parking lot, so we should define inoperable or have some language on that. I mean, what they're doing to the site and the redevelopment of the site, I think is a positive moving forward. So, I want to be supportive of it, but I do want to button down, to address the issues that, that are being brought up. I mean, this is town center. This is one of our, it's our featured downtown. So we need to make sure, as we went last month, we didn't allow storage of hot tubs outside of the hot tub company. you know, and I think that in this case, you know, unfortunately, I know damaged vehicles in staging or waiting to come into a bay to get worked on are part of this business. So they're gonna need to go somewhere, whether we tell them they can do it or they don't, because I mean, that's the only way they're gonna keep the lights on in there is to work on vehicles that are damaged and being painted, and they're gonna be outside waiting for another phase at, you know, certain points or waiting on parts while they're working on another vehicle. So, I mean, you know, as we bring up restrictions and reasons why we're gonna want a certain standard, we need to state, you know, A, what the standard is, what junk vehicle means, and, you know, and B, like define what's allowable in a motion, and at least get it into the minutes, you know, because it is a conditional use, so that, you know, everyone in the future is aware. So,
Mr. Chern?
To Mr. Strelchek's comments, you know, I think any vehicle that is there to be worked on could be the ones that we limit to the back of the property.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
maybe it's as simple as that.
Yeah, I think we can add that. I guess the concern, and I heard it from, I think Commissioner Paris, is how long they could be there as well. I think 24 hours may be a little tight if someone's got a car there and they're busy and it's going to take them a week or two to get to it. I don't think that's an issue. I think we're all under the same thought. We don't want this to turn into a scrapyard and things like that. So, but there's definitely language I think we can use to get what we are, I think, envisioning with regard to this. I will say this is one of the few auto repair sites that we haven't really received any complaints on in all the years I've been here. So they've run a pretty good operation, I think, for all these years.
yeah, historically.
If I can say something, the way the auto repair business for quality works is the people that have a drivable vehicle that need a repair come in, get an estimate, then they come back and do the work once they settle with the insurance company and do what needs to happen there. So those are active vehicles, those are worked on. You know, they have them come in when they're ready to be worked on, and they work on them and get them done and return them back to the customer. Something that might be brought in on a flatbed, that's, you know, the insurance company needs to come in and decide if it's going to be scrapped or repairable. I mean, that decision gets made pretty quickly. I think Roxanne could speak to that. And then they're gone because they don't need stuff laying around their space either, because they need room for the cars that they're working on. So there's no intention. Their existing operation, there's never been a history of having that be the case. The things that are there are being actively worked on. So I think having language that states it being actively worked on with the deliverable date makes sense for this use.
Can we require that damaged vehicles be parked out of the public view?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the back it would accomplish that. That back area is pretty well screened from the three sides. So I would just, I guess clarify, I would just say all the damaged vehicles would have to be parked at the rear of the site.
Yeah.
Can they get back in there with a flatbed?
Yeah, there's a way to get
'Cause
around.
those are the vehicles we're more concerned about versus the small ding in a door.
Yeah, there's access around. There's a driveway along the north side of the property that gets you to the back.
Damaged vehicles.
Okay.
So you can
So
get
damaged
back there.
vehicles have to be parked in the rear of the site. Commissioner Becky?
The site's the west side of the building, right?
Huh?
That is,
Rear of the site is the west side of the building?
Yeah.
Is that what we're talking
Correct.
about? I just want to make sure. Yeah?
yes.
Okay.
I like the smokestack. I especially like the word quality. I think that represents the city very well. Irrespective of what business is there.
So I'd make a motion for approval with the condition that the sign becomes what do we want to call that sign? A blade sign in the front?
If they choose.
Projected
Projecting
sign?
sign.
If they choose.
Up to 30 square feet, is that a reasonable size? Is that a little too big on that?
The 27.
I would, yeah, I mean, for a blade sign, that's a little large.
Okay.
I
It
think that
says 27.
27 is what they're proposing for the wall sign. So I guess the way our staff report is read is that they would either have the ability to do one wall sign or a projecting sign at that 27.
Right.
So if you want to keep it that way, then you don't have to really add any language to it.
So in my motion, if you wanted to keep one wall sign at 27, that would be acceptable. A projecting sign of a size to be determined by staff would also be acceptable, but there wouldn't be an allowance for the two. Enough people have said they like the smokestacks, so yeah?
So is a projected sign two-sided?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
just wanted to be sure.
And then vehicles would need to be parked in the rear, ideally as much out of sight from public view as possible, and with staff conditions.
I'll second that. Any further discussion? Call the roll. Robin?
Commissioner Chorin,
Aye.
Commissioner Hawley,
Aye.
Commissioner Becky Schaefer,
Aye.
Commissioner Parrish,
Aye.
Commissioner Lemke,
Aye.
Commissioner Jim Schaefer,
Aye.
Alderman Strelchek,
Aye.
Mayor Abadroff.
Aye.
Vote passes 8-0.
8-0, that's unanimous. Thank you, good luck.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to regular business, the next item is Scott Jackman for Marathon Bank. The applicant is seeking minor request for window area obstructions for the east side of the building for Marathon Bank at 11315 North Cedarburg Road in the Mequon Town Center.
I'm not sure if the applicant's here for this one.
Is there an applicant here?
This is a request for window coverings at Marathon Bank. I have a picture on the screen of the windows in question. The applicant's requesting that they have blinds be used for the two windows on the east elevation. The request is due to several factors, one of which was a financial security issue in terms of privacy, and the other request has to do with sunlight and exposure into the site. I spoke with the applicant a little bit, and since it was an east side elevation, I asked if they had any ability to have a sun study done to determine what the impact of the sun would be on that east elevation. At that point, and I did put a correspondence from the email that they basically said the primary reason is security and complying with federal law with privacy. So once I received that, I did ask our city attorney to weigh in to see whether that was an actual requirement. They've occupied the building for over a year now, so I didn't think, I assumed they weren't occupying the building in non-compliance, so I wanted to get a little bit better understanding of it. And the city attorney's memo is in the packet and basically says that shades are not a requirement. They could do other things if they're concerned about privacy. I took this picture, since there was not a solar study done, I took this picture, actually it happened to be at the spring equinox, so this was on March, I think, 22nd, so this is about 9 in the morning. And you can see the blinds, or the awnings that they did put up, actually doing a nice job of screening majority of that window at 9 a.m. There's a little bit of sunlight coming into the bottom of the building, but not that much. And at 9 a.m., as the sun rises, this condition will even get higher in the sky. It'll be less and less obtrusive into those spaces. So based on any other lack of evidence from the applicant regarding the impact of the sun, our recommendation is to deny the request for the shades in those window spaces.
Thank you, Jack. Commissioners, any comments? Commissioner
I
Becky?
just wanted to confirm the only window coverings we have in Town Center right now are in the dental office. Is that correct?
Those are the only ones that have applied and been in front of us. There may be others that have them put in that did not seek approval. That I can't say one way or another, but those are the ones that were in front of us.
Okay.
Commissioner Parrish?
Thank you. So for this one, I was just wondering if it would make more sense to table it than to simply deny it, just because they may want to come back with a solar study.
Well, I guess that would be up to you. If you feel that that would be helpful in making a determination, then I would make that recommendation.
Well, we're making it off of a picture, and obviously it's at their own peril because they didn't submit a solar study. You gave them the option to.
Right.
I guess what's going on in my head is we don't trying to not make things any more difficult for town center tenants, and supporting them. If I don't think they would have gone to this extreme over blinds if they were exaggerating. So I guess I would just like to give them the opportunity to prove their point, because they clearly didn't. Thank you.
Commissioner Hawley?
Are those offices against the sidewalk right there?
Yes, the furthest ones are offices, and then as you go towards this area here, that's kind of the lobby, but this is an office here and an office here, I believe.
I mean, if they know the financial, you know, the CFPB has regulations that you do need to have privacy, you would think that they would have thought that out a little bit before putting offices there.
Mr. Strelchak?
That's exactly my point. I mean, town center and the screening on the windows has been like kind of it's been a challenge since the first group of people came forward and asked for it. And we also went through a pretty significant code update to make sure that all the facilities within town center were compliant. We specifically sat down and wrote language that would allow forward dental to have blinds on that side of the street. You know, in this case, this is the last tenant in. This was done far after we did that code change to allow for, you know, blinds in certain areas, but ideally not limit them. The intent of the town center was not to have blinds in. The intent for the town center was to have retail. Now, the bank came forward and has put themselves in a retail space. They had a blank space. It was solid cement inside. Everyone walked by wondering which retail location or which store was going in there. They did their design, they did their build out, they paid for it all, they installed it all, knowing the code within town center that they weren't allowed to have blinds in the window, and now they want to close it off. And the purpose of this corner building is to have interaction from the people walking by. People should be able to look in and see activity within a suite. They should see something of interest that would draw them into the town center. And again, the financials on somebody's desk is not what people are looking for. It's not what that was intended to do. Plus the general sidewalk that walks, I just pulled up on Google Maps on my phone. The sidewalk has got a garden in between it, and then there's another sidewalk near there. If they put any type of something just that wouldn't allow people to stand right there looking in the window, they'd have the privacy that they intended. Nobody's going to see a financial document 10 feet away or 15 feet away on a desk. I don't see the hardship here. I think they knew the standards moving in. You know, I'm happy they invested in Mequon. I'm pleased to see them there, but I don't see the hardship on that space. And quite frankly, I don't think anyone should come forward with this from this point forward.
Commissioner Chorn?
I mean, I agree. You look at that picture, and if somebody wants to see the financial papers on somebody's desk, they have to make their way through the shrubbery to see it. So I think the issue of the privacy is not there. And as far as the shading, you offered them the opportunity to prove it with this solar study, and they declined to do it. So I think it's, you know, you gave them the opportunity, they didn't take it. So
I'd make a motion to deny.
I'll second that. Motion and a second to deny. Any further discussion?
I just want to quickly confirm. So they knew obviously that we were doing this tonight. When did they apply, and when was the solar? Have they had ample time? Because to Brian's point, we have already vetted window coverings, and they should have known when they moved in. And yet, it's a business that's in the town center, and if we want, they've had ample time. Is I guess where I'm going to address the solar study if they so chose, or did they indicate, oh, you know what, we really can't make it on this night that is on the calendar that we knew about. Can you move us to a different time?
Yeah, I didn't hear anything about the evening's meeting. I assume they were going to be here. The request, the email was a couple weeks ago. I mean, there was...
But you took the picture. That's 3 weeks ago, March 22nd.
And then shortly after that, I called them, and even Brian's response,
2.5.
which was March 28th, which this came after their request, and they're bringing up the financials. So they've had some time. I mean, if they were saying we were interested in doing it, but chose, you know, we just can't find anybody, we could have pushed them off for another meeting. But basically their response was, we just don't feel it's necessary because the primary reason is the financial privacy.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to deny. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Motion is adopted to deny. Moving on to our next item, Jim Hoffman for Pine Reserve LLC. The applicant is seeking rezoning recommendation to rezone from R6 duplex condominium planned unit development to R5 residential detached planned unit development to create 4 single-family lots for vacant land between 6710 and 6926 River Birch Drive. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's been a while, huh?
It's been a while.
Hi, Jim.
Mr. Hoffman built a lot of the fine properties you see in Mequon back in the 80s and 90s. Yeah.
So this ordinance that it created, not only this property, but it was also the whole Concord Creek development dates back to 2004. So they were originally approved for, this section of the ordinance was approved for 18 condominiums on roughly about 18 acres. They did build 5 of the side-by-sides, and they still have the ability to build 8 more. The request is to convert those side-by-sides into 4 single-family homes. So that would reduce the density overall by 4 units on the property. I have a picture of the area up on the screen. So basically, these are existing on this side. There's some existing down here. So this would be the 2 units, 2 units, 2 units, and 2 units. So it would be converted to 1, 2, 3, 4 lots, basically. This is similar to a request we had from Wally Lang with River Birch, which is actually, as you drive down this road, it connects right to that development that did the exact same thing, where they were approved for side-by-sides, and they converted those to single-family condominiums. And there was 2 buildings that remained as side-by-sides, but the rest were all converted to single-family. And those sat for a number of years. And then since he's did the switch, I'm pretty sure they're almost done. So they've sold, the market reacted, and I think there was a lot of interest in the single-family. So I don't see this as being much different than that case. And in fact, this will kind of tie in these single-family to those single-families. So you'll have some duplex condominiums as you enter the street, and then convert to single-family as you go through it. So overall, we're supportive of the request. This will have to go to common council because this is a rezoning request, and as he comes back in the future, he'll have to have a certified survey map done to split off these lots. But we do recommend approval.
Thank you, Jack. Mr. Hoffman, anything you want to add?
Jack has said things pretty well. It's just a simple matter of the fact that the lending environment has not been favorable to condominiums, and the market desire of condominiums when they're built speculatively has just not been there along with that. And we've tried for several years to sell it to another developer that maybe has a different source of funds, but that has not worked. We have discussed it with the existing unit owners for several annual meetings running, and for all the reasons just said, we would now request that you consider to rezone it single family.
Okay, thank you. City engineer.
So there's a few engineering concerns with changing usage from a condominium into single family, relating to that they need a new wetland delineation. The stormwater management would need to be updated to make sure that they're meeting the current requirements. I did review the overall plan. It's pretty close. But MMSD is looking to make changes in the next few years. So that is why that condition is written a little bit differently than how you typically see it, to make sure that the applicant knows that there may be some additional stormwater management requirements for that area.
Okay.
So will the homes in their pond be on the rest of the subdivision, or they kind of have their own?
They have their own pond. So on the south side,
Down here, right?
yep, thanks, Jack. So their pond meets the current MMSD requirements. There's a change for impervious surface that is likely to be in effect in the next year, that they would have to also meet for the site.
Thank you.
And I think in the narrative, he basically says they'll all be part of the same association with the existing condominiums.
And that's one of the requirements of approval.
Who would be responsible for the maintenance of the pond? Is it everybody?
It
within
would be the
unit?
group, as the existing side-by-side condominium owners, as well as the 4 lots, single-family lot owners.
HOA.
Okay, so the HOA, and that's clear, that'll be clearly stated. I just know, we just sent out recertification on the ponds, and I've gotten a lot of feedback from people that didn't know they were responsible for a pond, or 4 homes within a subdivision were noted as being the ones that were in charge of caring for the pond because the HOA had disbanded versus going after the full subdivision. So I've had some discussion back and forth, and I just asked that the language be clear as to who's taking care of the ponds once it's done. You know, it's a simple, making sure that text edit's there and it's accurate, but
That's a reasonable request. As there were 18 condominiums proposed originally, it would make sense that 1/18th is then attributed to each one of those. And with the fact that we are now requesting that 8 become 4, I want to say this in a simple way, the single-family lot owners would then be assessed 2/18ths. So therefore, the existing condo owners would not be assessed any more proportionally than they would have been otherwise. It is not our intent to have it all part of one HOA. It would be really difficult to administer that way. We are working on a document right now that we would work with staff to make sure the language is consistent, but whereby an individual purchaser of a single-family lot would be told, and it would be part of the purchase package, what their responsibility is with respect to the pond maintenance, so there wouldn't be any misunderstanding down the road.
yeah, that'd be great. As long as we can address it, because I've just had some confusion coming back to me, and that'll something we can preemptively plan. I think an ordinance where you go from higher density to lower density is usually a pretty easy one for me to approve. I mean, it's a generally easy ordinance to support. And then the fact that you've talked to the neighbors and they've been aware of this for some time and haven't come forward to object, and you're stating that they're in support of it. I'd be in support of this as well. Would you like a motion? I'd make a motion to approve.
Second.
Subject to staff comments.
Subject to staff comments, and then just making sure that language on the pond is clearly stated for all involved.
So a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 8-0, that's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item is Mr. David Hoff for Dave Schenecker. The applicant is seeking preliminary condo plat, development agreement, fill permit, and specimen tree removal approval to allow for 6 condominiums for the property located at 10950 and 10922 North Cedarburg Road.
As I believe the commissioners have seen this several times now, I think originally for the consultation, and then we were back for the rezoning. The rezoning, the planning commission approved in September. It is going to common council for approval tomorrow night. So any action tonight will be contingent upon them approving the rezoning. I have the preliminary plat up on the screen. It is similar to what we've all seen before. There's the total of 6 units up in this area here. The plan is fairly identical to what we've seen. There were some waivers granted at the time of the PUD with regard to setbacks. This area here is a large outlot that's part of the adjacent floodway area, so they're a little tight on this section, and there's a little tightness in this back corner here. But those were all addressed at the time of the PUD. We've also drafted a development agreement that the applicant has seen and I believe has signed off on, which that will allow one model plex building to be built prior to the final plat. And I did bring it up at the time of the rezoning. There's one specimen tree on the property that'll have to come out. It's in the center of the site, but the site is also being filled by at least a couple feet. That would damage the tree even if it was an area that was not being occupied by a building. City Forester's memo is in the packet that recommends removal of it in accordance with the either the replacement policy or the donation policy to the tree fund. So with that, we do recommend approval of this contingent upon common council action tomorrow night.
Thank you, Jack. Mr. Hoff, any comments?
No,
No?
sir. Thank
Been
you.
through this enough, huh?
I think we all have.
This is a good reuse of the property.
That is.
Alderman Strelka.
I'd make a motion to approve, and I did review the tree, and being on the tree board, I mean, I don't think that one could have been saved. It's a reasonable request in this case, so
Subject to staff comments.
subject to staff comments. Thank you for
We have a
reminding me.
second.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve, subject to staff comments. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Great.
Carry on. All right.
Good seeing you again. Thank you.
Next item is Plunkett Rasich Architects LLP for Lumen Christi Catholic Parish. Applicant is seeking landscape plan amendment and lighting plan approval, including waivers for the proposed addition for the property at 2750 West Mequon Road.
I have to recuse myself.
Yes, you do.
So if the commission recalls, the applicant was before the planning commission in February for an addition approval to the existing church building. Now they are back here for lighting plan approval and landscape plan amendment approval. They are requesting a few waivers to the lighting plan. Overall, staff is supportive of the proposed lighting and landscape plan. The waivers that are being requested tonight to the lighting plan include waivers to the maximum illumination of the building surface. They're requesting a maximum height waiver to the fixtures of the building on the facade, and then also a waiver to the hours of operation for the lighting. Staff does not support the waiver to exceed the illumination of the facade and tower. If you take a look at the building here, let me see if I can go back. This rendering shows the proposed lighting of the exterior facade. The areas that exceed the illumination are right around the two fixtures that flank the entrance. The requirement of the code states that the illumination of a facade for decorative purposes cannot exceed 10-foot candles. In areas around the door, you see foot candles up to, you see it at 130 in some areas, up to 20. So these areas that are highlighted in red or circled in red are the areas that exceed the foot candle requirements. Other areas, including the bell and the cross, and other areas that are illuminated on the facade do meet the 10-foot requirement. Staff believes that for the purpose of the illuminating the feature for decorative purposes, that meeting the 10-foot candles is not impractical, and that they could find solutions to keep it within the code requirement. The applicant is also seeking a waiver for the height requirement of the fixtures. The code requires 16 feet in height maximum for fixtures that are attached to buildings. In the case of the illumination of the tower, there will be 4 fixtures flanking the corner of the bell tower, and then the illumination or the fixtures that is lighting the cross will also exceed that height. Staff is supportive of the height waiver because we believe that the illumination adds to the quality and richness of the architecture. So we do support the waiver for the height of the fixtures. The other waiver that is being requested tonight is the hours of operation for the illumination. The code requires luminaires to be turned off from the close of business to sunrise, unless the building remains open after 11 p.m., which is not the case on this property. The applicant has provided hours of operation. They typically have office hours until 4:30. They do have occasional meetings that run until 9:30 p.m. So we would be supportive of something that is illuminated until 9:30 p.m. However, in this case, we believe that the illumination of the building and the cross in particular is a symbol of refuge for the community. Churches historically have been a symbol of refuge for individuals in the community, and that we believe that while the church is not open 24 hours a day, the illumination of the cross in the building serves as a reminder of the mission of the church. And if the Planning Commission finds that that is a compelling case, then they may approve the waiver for illumination of the building until 11 p.m. as requested by the applicant. One condition is that the staff would support illuminating the building until 11 if the illumination meets the foot candle requirements. So all the facade illumination would have to meet the 10-foot candle requirements in order to be illuminated until 11 p.m. The applicant is also requesting landscape plan amendment. There was a landscape plan approval in 2015. The amendment is for the areas adjacent to the new addition and adjacent to Mequon Road. The plan is requesting the removals of several trees along Mequon Road. The city forester has been out on the site and he does not have any issues with the removal of the trees. Staff has no issues with the landscape plan amendment. We are requesting street trees along Mequon Road. There's an area where 3 trees are going to be removed along Mequon Road, and we are requesting that street trees be provided in that area. Typically, street trees are in the terrace area when we have required them for other projects. In this project, in the adjacent parking lot to the west, staff did allow for street trees to be within the property limits in the parking lot setback. We would also allow that in this case. We just want to see something in this area so that there isn't a gap in landscaping. So with that, we do recommend approval of the landscape plan amendment and the lighting plan with the waivers subject to the conditions in the report.
Thank you, Papula. Go to the applicant. You have any comments?
Do I need to state my name?
Sure.
First. Matt Iwanski with Berghammer Construction, the general contractor, construction manager. Mike Walton, who's the charge of the building project with the parish. I guess to address the items on behalf of Marty, who stepped away. The church is actually, the chapel is open 24 hours a day. There's a chapel that's isolated on the south front, an adoration chapel that is open 24 hours. That's kind of here nor there. I think the church is agreeable to 11 p.m. turning the lights off as well. The foot candle level, the problem that they're running into is trying to, when you looked at that specific photometric plan of how it throws the light, because it's a wall mount fixture that throws light up and down to illuminate the stone that they're taking vertically and around. So it's trying to give some height without, taking it to the sky. And when you have that fixture coming off, it's catching that part of the wall as it throws it vertically. And I know that Marty had worked with the electrical designer to try to come up with a fixture that would work, and I think they were coming up empty, short of going to a fixture that just wouldn't throw the light as much. So you'd end up, the illumination going vertical it would just be less. So I think the church's view is still to prefer to keep the light throw, because it is only a couple spots where it exceeds the 10 and the overall average is well below the 10.
Alderman Strelchak.
I've looked this over pretty stringently, and I was really happy to hear what you came forward to say, and then what staff kind of reviewed and answered a few of the maybe questions in my mind. I feel that the entryway lighting, although it is a little higher on foot candles, Papula, can you advise for me what the foot candle requirement would be if it was just a front door lighting, something that would just illuminate the entry to something and it wasn't an accent light? I think my hunch is that foot candle allowance would be higher.
It would be higher than the 10-foot candles. I think in the code, it would probably be classified as for the overall photometric of the site, which is calculated a little differently than decorative lighting. So I think that safety lighting would be included in the overall lighting plan versus if it's for decorative, you're looking at each individual facade foot candle.
So my premise for allowing the higher foot candles is, even as you look at the rendering, that's the entryway into the church. It draws attention to the front door as people are collecting outside of the church prior to going in or immediately upon leaving. They've got an illuminated path in which they're, going and looking for their keys and things like that. And I think safety-wise, the higher foot candles in that, I'll call it like a cove area or that courtyard type area, is acceptable. And then I also look at the foot candles once you reach Mequon Road, and that's down to 0. So really for me, like if the foot candles were exceeded and there was a lot of light spill heavily into Mequon Road or across the street based on the foot candles, I may not be supportive of it. But it's not spilling into Mequon Road, it's lighting the entryway, and in my opinion, especially if you have a 24-hour adoration chapel that's, to the exterior of the building, I feel it's a safety issue. It probably saves you a fixture. It looks better than the fixture you'd probably have to select to put there. So, I would be supportive of that. Also speaking in terms of the 11 p.m. lighting, I don't think 11's unreasonable. It's not on all night. That was one of my concerns, is that it wouldn't be on all night. And 10-foot candles is a requirement, but it does drop down significantly to sub 1, or I think, I thought I saw a number like, it was less than like 2, foot candles. So it wasn't like the whole thing was illuminated evenly and brightly. There's actually probably less light on that feature than, what would be allowable for code if you took it just by average versus spotlighting. So I'm comfortable with it. If Planning Commission is uncomfortable with the lighting being on, until 11, I would recommend maybe reviewing it, just see if we have had any neighbor complaints, maybe in 1 year. But again, I'm comfortable that as is. I don't think it's exceeding anything that would meet any expectations.
Is staff aware of any lighting fixtures that could meet the 10-foot candles?
Well, I think it's a design issue. I think you would either have to add maybe 2 more fixtures higher up and wash it from both directions in order to accomplish and have a lower level output. I think their issue is that they're trying to throw that light a long way. So in order to do that, you have to have it so bright at the source to get it to go that far. So there's other methods you could use. I mean, I'm not sure like a specific fixture that'll do that, but I think that's the issue here, is that they're trying to throw that light such a long distance that it creates a hot spot right at the source. And yeah, it's not for a very long time, but it's extremely bright in comparison to the rest of the building and to the surrounding area. And I would say that those canopy lights are also somewhat, I just put it in context for you in terms of the entranceway. If this was a egress emergency exit off the back or something like that, the building code only requires a 1-foot candle illumination. Our code basically allows you 1.5, just have a little bit of variation there, but so that's on the low end, and that's not meant for a primary entrance. I understand this is a primary entrance, but parking lots, we do it at an average of 2. So that, and on the other extreme, like a gas station canopy, that's 20 is our maximum for an average. So this is kind of getting up there in terms of the level of illumination of that entranceway. And I guess the concern is that there's not a lot of light competition in this surrounding area, so that it may appear to be brighter than what it is regardless. So
Is the source visible?
the source of those,
Source of the light, or is that shielded?
no, that should be recessed in the
Into the-
shroud.
okay.
But what you're seeing is the light shooting out and hitting that first part of the wall, and that's what's going to be the brightest portion of it.
Commissioners, anyone else?
Just a quick question. The packet said 135-foot candles in areas. Is that, so is the pic, what is that? What's 135-foot candles?
So if you see the image on the screen where the light is shooting out, it is hitting 135-foot candles immediately.
Oh, I got it. And then
facing
it's
to the
10 at the
building.
bottom.
It's a little hard to read on the screen, but
So what does the applicant request?
Two sides match?
10, 15?
No?
We
The
want
app-
10, they want what?
this is,
Side of the
they're
door is brighter than the
proposing
other?
this plan here, which exceeds the 10-foot candle requirements. So what they're proposing are these foot candles that you're seeing here that exceed 10-foot candles.
How many feet is that? The scale's to an inch, but it's on a screen, which is,
The top to bottom of that circle is about 7 feet, 6 feet.
Why are they different from one side to the other?
Probably because of where the points are hitting. If I'm looking at it from here, you got on the right side, there's a photometric point immediately above the fixture housing, so where the light's coming out. And if you look on the left, that fixture point's a little bit off to the right. If you ask me, that's kind of goofy because it says 4.2 immediately above it on the left one. But then it's 100 and, or it's 92? 92, is that what it says?
Yeah.
92.2, yeah.
This may be a stupid question. Can't you put lights on a dimmer?
It'd be no different than turning the fixture down. It just wouldn't throw the light to have a vertical throw. They're trying to achieve is, I'm not the architect, but based on what I understand they're trying to achieve is you have two, on your main entrance coming in, you got two can lights, big lights next to each other, cylindrical lights that stand out, and you're trying to throw that light up and down to accentuate the arch that they're forming, because they're investing a large amount of money into that stone arch, and they're trying to accentuate it to give it some vertical presence.
You remember Concordia? We approved parking lot lights at Concordia, and then after they were installed, we found that they were too bright, and it took a good year or two and citizen involvement to find some different fixtures, and they eventually corrected the problem. So I guess what I'm getting at is maybe we can approve this, and then after it's installed, we can revisit it in a year, and if anyone has a problem with it, we can try and look for a solution to that problem. But otherwise, approve it subject to a review in a year and see if there's a problem. Kind of a suggestion. Because a lot of times, we're concerned about things and then we approve them and they turn out they're not a problem at all. But we have had instances where we didn't think there was a problem and it turned into a problem. So we have to be careful, especially with light.
And our goal is not to have it anything excessively bright either. We want it to look nice. It's what the architect was recommending, so.
Well, the building looks very
Wouldn't have
nice
it-
in the picture.
Yeah. Yeah. And we wouldn't have a problem with that, rectifying a situation if it was excessively bright.
Commissioner Schaefer.
I would go the other way. I would prefer to go with something less light and assume that there might be a problem, because I was having a side conversation, which is bad behavior, but I did it anyway with Brian, because across the street you have Range Line Inn. Wasn't his fault. Range Line Inn, which is not like it's not a beacon, it's not a well-lit building. You have the cemetery, which obviously not a lot of light there. But then you have the neighborhoods, and I remember when we talked about the expansion originally, there were quite a few neighbors, and concerns. I think a lot of their concerns revolved around, the water. But nonetheless, it's a neighborhood that's immediately, east and north of there. I would actually move to approve per staff recommendations, which includes making the lighting meet code, the 10 versus the 135.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve subject to staff conditions.
What time's the cutoff on that?
11.
11. I'm comfortable with that. I got a comment.
And if this passes and it doesn't work, or you can't find a way to make it work, you can always ask
Come back.
again. Alderman Strelchak.
Yeah, my only concern is that, I think keeping the exterior of that building clean is important. So as we're looking at a solution, whether it be today or moving forward, I'd hate to see 4 fixtures going up the side of a building. I'd rather see it a little bit brighter and taper off a little bit higher. I'll vote in favor of it tonight because I support the project and the lighting, but I would prefer to see a little more flexibility on the foot candles.
Okay.
Like what?
Well, like I said,
Picking a random number.
if they can't make it work then they can come back and with the solution and ask us, and we won't charge you to come back or anything like that, but we'll revisit the issue if you have a problem making it work. Give it a try. Pray. Maybe it'll work.
Marty's retiring in a few days, so I guess he's got something to do for a few days.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
So the other topic was the trees along the road.
That was actually part of the motion, so the comments and staff.
Yeah, you can take
Well, I have, that one I have a question on, I guess. Because that kind of ties in with the lighting of what the parish had been planning here, and that part of what and I don't know if this is what originally went before here, in the early concept, they had a separate bell tower with a giant cross. Did that ever get presented in front of? No, that didn't. Because they were trying to establish some presence along Mequon Road. Because right now the church is tucked behind. You don't see it very much. It's not like St. Boniface down the street to the west. And their purposeful intention of creating that bell tower design as the main entrance was also to be seen from that intersection of Range Line and Mequon Road. So
It's right in front of it.
when they designed this with meeting the requirements of the trees between the sidewalk towards the parking lot, when they decided to take out the ash trees, because they seem to be on the path downhill, they took those trees and purposely moved them towards the west so that the trees were it was more visible and open on the east side, so that it's more, there's a visible line of sight to the bell tower from the street. And I believe, as I understood it, the suggestion was to rearrange the trees from what's drawn, to move them over to create more of a uniform tree spacing.
Correct, that would be staff's recommendation. Again, typically, street trees would be in the terrace area, but on the previous approval, we've allowed it within the area between the sidewalk and the parking lot. Staff doesn't believe that having trees in this location would really obscure the view of the tower. I mean, the tower, it was above, with the cross, above 42 feet in height. So I don't think street trees would really be an issue. Typically, you see street trees in a straight line. In this case, staff is willing to maybe concentrate them more in some area in here where you're not blocking this entire area. However, we don't want this gap of no landscaping.
So it's like we mandate a certain density of trees, but they don't have to be 30 feet apart precisely.
Yes, but we would want it within this area. It's roughly 100 feet in length. That would be a gap if we were to approve it as the applicant is requesting tonight.
So they can work with you on the placement of the trees?
Yes.
So it'd be shuffling the trees that are already satisfying the requirement, not having the parish buy more trees, correct?
Street trees are required 1 per 30 feet, so if we could get that same density and we could shuffle it along this frontage, you can work with staff on that.
I don't think you'll have a problem with that.
There's the intersection right there. There are cars entering and exiting. There's a sign right there as well. As long as those trees would not interfere with the visibility of that sign, or create some type of a visual block for drivers.
We wouldn't want you to do that. So
Right.
you said there's 100 feet, so what is that, 3 trees?
Yes.
So you have to plant 3 trees, and you can plant them where they're most advantageous to you.
Good. Thank you.
If you're willing to work with the parish on positioning the trees, and
Yeah.
we can shuffle them, as long as we don't shove them too close, obviously, to that intersection and the sign, that's workable.
Right. That shouldn't be a problem. Did we vote?
Yeah.
We did, okay. I've forgotten already. Okay. We're done? You're approved?
All right,
For
thank
staff.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is Boulder Venture for Associated Bank. The applicant is seeking sign waiver approval for a second wall sign. Sign waiver approval for a wall sign that exceeds the height requirements, and building and site plan amendment to amend the condition of approval that prohibited signage in the glass tower for a proposed 2-story, 7,600 square foot financial institution at 11223 Northport Road. You have to remove this from the table.
Make a motion to remove from the table?
Second.
Motion second to remove from the table. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
This matter is now before us. Papula.
Thanks, Mayor. As far as signage and what is being proposed tonight, the applicant is only proposing a tower sign this evening. However, approval of the tower sign still requires a building and site plan amendment. Tonight, the applicant is also requesting approval for illumination of the green band. The illumination of the green band was never part of any previous approval, so that would require a building site plan amendment, which again is on the, is being requested of the applicant tonight, so that may be considered as part of the approval this evening. Staff does not support the proposed tower sign. After reviewing the minutes and the discussions at the last meeting, staff noted that several concerns were raised regarding the tower height in general and the sign within the tower. There were discussions about potential compromises among commissioners, as well as other concerns that staff and the commissioners felt needed to be addressed. Staff does not believe that this submittal addresses any of those issues, and that a significant effort was put in to propose something that was along the lines of what the commissioner had discussed, and something that staff would want to support. Again, the commissioners had expressed concerns regarding the height of the tower and the height of the tower without an element inside of it. There were conversations regarding maybe reducing the height of the tower and including allowing the second wall sign. That was not addressed in this proposal. So what we have before us here, really, in staff's opinion, is not much different than what we've seen in the past. If the commission recalls, they did see a tower sign at the time of building and site plan approval. They prohibited a tower sign as part of a condition. Last month, they tabled the request for a sign waiver, and now the applicant is here with us again this evening with their resubmittal, and we feel that it doesn't address any of our concerns. So staff would be recommending denial this evening of the building site plan amendment to allow for a tower sign. Staff does not support the illumination of the green band, so staff recommends denial of the illumination and also denial of the sign waiver.
Thank you, Papula. We'll go to the applicant.
Hi, good evening. Robert Schmidt from Boulder Venture.
Hi,
I'm
Robert.
joined by Andrew Kerr from Rinka Architects, Kurt Smith from Boulder Venture, and tonight we're also joined by David Knight, Director of Real Estate for Associated Bank, and coincidentally also a Mequon resident. I'm going to turn it over to Andrew to do most of the presentation regarding the sign construction and the tower height. But you will recall at the last meeting that there were the 30-minute conversation did evolve into, I think, sort of not a consensus, but it sort of evolved into a point where, people said we want to see less green, we want to see something less intense, we want to see something more artistic, we want to see something in the tower. We did remove the north wall sign as part of this presentation, and we also removed the ground sign. The green band was on the building that was approved, but I guess it wasn't called out as illuminated at that point. It would be on a dimmer and on a timer, so it would be controllable. So with that, I'll turn it over to Andrew Kerr to give the details on the submittal.
Thank you, and thank you everybody for your time this evening. I'd like to first talk a little bit about the reduction of the height of the tower. We did spend quite a bit of time looking at that. The building as it's designed currently has been pushed into the forward corner of the site. Typically, and Papula, I think you have a sort of a typical branch that we typically would design. That building is 43 feet wide, and the building, as we have it currently sited on the parcel, because of being pushed up into the front corner, is 65, 66 feet wide. The result of that, unfortunately, is that the structure has to be nearly 3 feet deep in order for us to span clear across the lobby of the bank. And that would be the same on both floors, obviously, since the columns go all the way up. So when we looked at trying to reduce the height of the tower, it wasn't simply just a function of whacking a couple of feet off the top of the tower. There is quite a bit of module that's built into the building. When we looked at trying to reduce the size of the tower, that would be incumbent on reducing the overall height of the building. And when we looked at that, we simply did not have any capacity to do so. The structure, just the additional depth of the structure to span that distance, doesn't allow us to make the building any shorter, unfortunately. If we can go back to yeah, thank you. So what we talked about last time was that this internally illuminated sign, which is normally green with a white tree on it, was a little bit too forward, a little bit too aggressive. What we are proposing here tonight, that element has been re-rendered now as a downlight for the tower. The materials there, I think you've been passed around. That's a custom acrylic panel that would be the sidewalls of the panel, and then the logo itself would just be made out of a green spandrel glass. The bottom of that element would be an LED sheet, which would provide the majority of the illumination for the tower. And we believe that that does address some of the conversation that we had in the previous month, that we have reduced the overall brashness of the illuminated green cube. It's now a downlight that's in the tower. We also have, as my colleague said, we've also tabled the idea of the north wall sign. We have offered up removal of the monument sign. Throughout the course of this process, we have tried to accommodate every request that staff has made. We have pushed this building to the front corner of the site. We have made it a very inefficient floor plan, which is going to increase the overall construction budget significantly. We have given up a curb cut that was on the sign and are accessing it through the existing curb cut is there only. We have removed all of the external branding on the building with the exception of one small green band that's on the very top. So it's not as if we are coming back before you here and just not trying to play ball. We have, all the way along, I think we've been very accommodating in trying to meet Mequon's desires to have this building in place, and its Associated Bank's desire to increase their presence in Mequon with this state-of-the-art flagship building. I think it's, David, correct me if I'm wrong, it's the largest one we've built in over a decade, I think. So this would really, place Mequon as one of Associated Bank's most important markets. We do believe that some level of differentiation on this building is appropriate. If we take all of the differentiation on this building away, it functionally does not. It doesn't look any different than a doctor's office. This is an Associated Bank. We just heard a great deal of conversation about the illumination on a church and the importance of that illumination for them, and the importance of that illumination for the significant investment that they were making. While we are not a church, obviously, this is no different in that regard. Associated Bank, as you could see from the previous examples, has a very forward-looking branch prototype that we deploy in 97% of every market that we go into. Is the building that you had seen previously, the one-story version of that building. But the Mequon market, we believe, is important enough to make this investment.
Commissioners. I'll start.
I don't understand why you can't lower the height of the tower.
If I lower the height of the tower, we're going to mess up the module of all the glazing on the building. And also the downlight, as we start to lower the tower, gets close to the height that people can reach out and touch it as they're going up that stair. So we did look at it. We looked at taking a couple of feet out of it. We didn't feel that that a couple of feet was going to, make a significant difference in the way that the committee saw the building. The building is currently within the height allowances for this zone.
I'm not concerned about the height of the building, I'm concerned about the height of the tower. I think it's too high. I can't support it at this height. I don't know about the rest of the commissioners.
Mr. Schaefer.
I think I said this a little bit last time, but I feel like you're manufacturing hardships and then trying to get us to address them. I understand you have branding. You mentioned 95 to 90% of your banks look like this. Maybe we're in the 3 to 5%.
Certainly. And that's why we've made the accommodations that we have.
Alderman Strelchak.
The intent for removing that original green sign from the tower element was to remove a sign at that height from the tower element. The only thing that you did was maybe come up with a nice acrylic material that looks nice in the hand, but it won't look any different from the street, being white, and you reverse the logo. I've worked in signage and branding for 20 years. All you did is reverse the logo. It's still a logo at the height, which is what we objected to in the first point. I'm struggling with the fact that you're before us tonight. You listened to what we said. We wanted it to be an art element, and then you came for, in natural materials, stone or wood. Look at the minutes that we approved tonight. You had access to those because you got the packet. I got an email from you. And then you completely refused to listen to staff recommendations. I don't support the lit green band. I don't support the sign at this height. The only thing that I'm seeing is if you move this any closer to the lake, you're a great lighthouse. I understand that you want your brand to be front and forward, but this, as I said in the last meeting, this type of design doesn't fit Mequon, and you're trying to just reword the exact same process in a secondary and a third and a fourth meeting. It's just not, you still haven't hit what we've asked. I'm going to vote against it tonight. I just don't see what you did any differently besides switch it from green to white, honestly. And you should lower the tower element. It doesn't fit the building. You've admitted it in the meeting. The commissioners have all stated it. If it doesn't have a design, if it doesn't have a logo in there as you've shown it, that height of that tower element doesn't fit. So if you want an architecturally pleasing building and the sign element doesn't get approved, it would behoove you to have the best looking building on that street that you possibly can, and lowering the tower element would accomplish that for you.
I'd like to address two things if I could. Number one, I've never said that the tower is an inappropriate height. That would be inaccurate. Secondly, we worked with the manufacturer of that custom acrylic for quite some time to develop something that would have that sort of sparkle effect when viewed from a distance. We have looked at that panel from 50, 60 feet away. You can still see the effect that is present in that material. That's a fully custom material, and it will show its design features from a distance.
Can you highlight for me where acrylic grows or is found naturally in nature? We said come forward with a natural element, something subtle that was wood or something simple. Acrylic did not fit that category that this commission requested. Acrylic's what you've wanted all along. You've got a nicer looking acrylic than you had before, but it's still going to be some level of acrylic that's going to be in there. The only difference is you might have had glass with a vinyl behind it, but it was either glass or an acrylic substance, probably acrylic from a safety standpoint. It's just a more decorative thing than you had in there before.
Mr. Parrish.
Thank you. Thanks for your patience in coming back every month and trying to work with the plan. I do see changes that you've made in the plan. So I think we all agree you've removed the sign from the north. You've removed the monument sign, presumably because when you
There
developed...
never was one.
Pardon?
There never was one.
We suggested it,
Okay.
suggested
yeah,
it, they
but
didn't want it.
They can do that on the north property. So, I mean, I'm definitely, I think, outnumbered on this matter. I guess I just wanted to convey to Associated Bank that despite the process, it's an important business in Mequon, and we appreciate it. And I did like the idea of doing an artistic element. I'm wondering if maybe you didn't go far enough. I think the white is partly what's bothering everyone. I was wondering if there was a less offensive color than white that maybe would, I don't know if that would address anyone's concern, or we don't want you coming back again and again every month with new ideas. But I guess I was hoping that you were going to come back with something that my fellow commissioners could go with. But if it was less bright, I probably would think you came back with an artistic piece, for what it's worth.
This is not a glowing cube. This is a downlight in the tower. It's not an internally illuminated sign.
It sounds more artsy, but it still looks white and bright, and like you didn't convince them. So is there an alternative color, or just any ideas on the spot you can throw out, or is this it? This is all you're willing to do?
I mean, we're of course we're willing to work with the committee. I mean, when you say is there a less offensive color than white, I mean, I'm not.
Just more matching the color of the building, or earth color, more natural. No. I don't.
Commissioner Lemke?
I would agree. I would have liked to have seen something more natural. I think that's what we said. That being said, it's a lot better than the green box was. I would live with this. I would not support illuminating the green band, but this would be something that I could see as a compromise.
I think we said the last time that we viewed the cube in the tower as a sign, and we don't want a sign in the tower. We still have a sign in the tower. And I believe you said at the last meeting, if we didn't put that there, what the tower would look dumb without something in it. And certainly if, you put a bank there and then 20 years from now, the bank moves somewhere else and somebody gets this building with a tower, they're not going to put that cube in it. What are they going to do with it? So the whole idea of putting a big cube in this tower seems like a mistake. It's something that I don't think we want to see, but we're not sure what you can do about it. Lower the tower, put something else in there. I mean, I have no objection to the little, I call it a pine tree shape, but the cube is just overpowering in my view. Commissioner Baca.
Well, I think the major issue, or at least the first issue, is the height of the tower. I think the tower is too high. I really do.
It's to code, though.
Pardon?
It is to code, though, correct?
It's
allowed to be that tall.
It is to code, and it was approved at that height.
Right. Well, that's my point. So if in fact you lower the tower, then what do you do in terms of the signage?
Well, if the tower is lowered, then you're not going to be able to put anything in there because people that are on the second floor are going to be able to reach out and touch whatever's hanging down there. That tower is the signature element of every Associated Bank. We have removed all of the branding on this building with the exception of that tower. There's not a single bank that we have built across the entire footprint in, I don't know how many years, David? Yeah, 10 years. There's not a single bank that we have built across the footprint that does not have that signature tower on it. It is the signature move that identifies Associated Bank.
Could I ask, what was the St. Paul, I don't know if you know this or not, when was the St. Paul branch built? Do you have any idea? Because that was one of the buildings we originally discussed that does not have the tower element.
Yeah, that would have been probably about 8 years ago. Yeah.
There's one in Thiensville. It's a little house. A what?
Might want to go talk.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, obviously, the building that's right next door on this site now is not one of their prototype buildings, but every building that we have built during that period of time has this, it's called the Niles Tower. It's named after the CFO of the bank.
Mr. Hawley.
I think we can all agree that this is better than the Bank Mutual building. I actually kind of like it. I think it's forward thinking. I think it is, I think it's different. You have to have some branding. I completely understand that. It's a Wisconsin-based bank. I think we're making it really, really hard. They've come back here how many times? I want to work with them.
This was the first branch that we built that was 2 stories. This branch in Mequon will be the only other branch that we built.
Up on the screen, Mayor, we have this is the St. Paul. This is why I asked the question, because this is a branch in St. Paul, which we
Like that way
actually
better.
referred them to in terms of what we felt was a nice design that would have fit a little bit nicer on that stretch of Port Washington Road. That's why I asked the question when that was built in relation to the tower element.
St. Paul, Minnesota.
Yeah. And there's also one at Manitowoc, I believe, that was all, I don't know if that was a rehab building either, but that one also does not have like a tower element associated with it that we also referred them to in terms of another design that we thought would have been appropriate.
And obviously, we looked pretty closely at this St. Paul prototype. We tried to take as many elements of this as possible when we were designing this bank. This is a 15,000 square foot building, so it's twice the size of the branch that we were proposing for the Mequon site. That does allow us to do certain other things with massing and height and other elements of the building to make a composition that hangs together. Again, this building was 8 years ago. The one in Manitowoc, I think, was probably 10 years ago, and the current prototype that's being deployed across 3 states, Minnesota, Illinois, and Wisconsin, every new branch that is built has that tower element in it, and significantly more green presence. So we are trying, to accommodate Mequon's desires here. It's not as if we're, just stomping around, but that tower is the element that defines Associated Bank.
This is the Manitowoc location for Associated Bank.
It's a great looking building.
And it looks like it was built in 2012.
No, that's not right. That's not right. That building's at least maybe 10 years old.
How do people find it?
I was hoping not to redesign the whole building. I thought we kind of approved it with.
Huh?
Well, I thought we approved it with the tower that's there, and it's just a matter of what's going to go in it.
I think we have. What it's worth, we never built this building.
Right, we said no sign in the tower,
Yeah.
Correct.
no illumination of the green
So
bands.
come back with something.
And no north side sign.
Yeah.
So you can have an east side sign, an unilluminated green band, and a tower without a sign in it. So the question seems to be, what are you gonna put in the tower?
Yeah.
I think if I could characterize the discussion that we had the last time, it was on the one hand, it was, a sign on the north side of the building and a reduced tower, or no sign on the north side of the building and then something in the tower. And so we've come back with no sign on the north side of the building and something in the tower. We have spent some time trying to design something that will be a functional element in the tower and be very attractive from both a distance and up close. It's been bandied around that maybe the tree could be made out of some sort of wood or something like that, but the redesigning the corporate logo, I think, is a little bit outside of my pay grade. I don't think that we can just simply.
Logo's the little green thing.
Say that again?
The logo is the little green thing,
The logo's the
the
little green
little
thing.
pine
yes.
tree.
Yeah, correct.
It's on the side of the building. It's all by itself. That's the logo. I get it. Okay, but the cube is, it's just obnoxious.
I think at the last meeting, though, it was decided, I mean, they can go ahead with this building right now without that cube in the tower, correct?
That's
And we decided at the last meeting, we did not like the look of a empty tower, so we asked them to come back with something to put in there, and they have. It's not,
But not a sign.
we said something more artistic, I agree. Flipping the colors isn't overly exciting. But again, I could go along with this as a compromise.
Did we approve it with corporate art last month, or what was? No.
We
didn't
tabled
approve
it last
empty. We
month.
tabled it, okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Strelczyk.
I think what we're addressing is that where you have your design and branding standards that you wish to build in your building, they do not fit what Mequon's design and branding standards are allowable on a building. We don't allow signs at this height, period. It's not in our code. Any vote tonight need an awful good reason beyond the fact that I kind of like it as to why you're going to approve a sign at this height within a building that's a four-sided sign. It does not fit what our code is. White, green, or any flavor of earth tone in between on acrylic is a logo branded sign. You're intending to do that. The intent is to draw attention to your brand at that height with what you're doing in here. It's not an artistic element. You brought up Lumen Christi as a comparison. It's completely different. They're lighting stone on the outside of a building. You're not lighting stone without a logo on it on the outside of a building. You're also not a religious institution, although if you expand, maybe someday you will be, but I think we're discussing it and we're trying to figure out what to do because we want to feel better as commissioners, and I think at this point, either it fits the Mequon standard for what fits in the code. They definitely have a hardship for a building they have yet to build. It's in design phase. They've yet to build it. They can come forward with a different design to get their signage better. They can lower the tower element. They can come forward with a north side signage. But at this point, I'd like to vote on it tonight. I'm going to make a motion for denial on both the sign element and the illuminated band. Again, I don't think you need to brand your business at that height in Mequon. No other business is allowed to do it. I don't feel comfortable making an exception for you. You haven't built this building. I don't see a reason for an exception here.
Would you be receptive to approving it with the green not illuminated and no sign in the tower?
I think they already have approval for that.
They have
I think it
approved that
already is approved at that level.
That ship sailed.
Okay.
So if the material is the stone that's on the building, okay with is that what you're saying?
What's that?
Instead of it being white acrylic, it's the stone that's on the side. I don't know if we can make that up.
I think we can probably make it look like the stone, but I'm not sure I would want to try to,
I guess I'm at this point where this is the fourth meeting to discuss this tower, and it keeps coming forward. I'm not comfortable with a sign at that height. I'm comfortable with more signage on the side of the building. If you guys want to come back forward with something on that. Again, you stated you didn't like the tower without the graphic element in it. I would encourage you to just make that more in balance with the building. I can't tell you to do it tonight, but I can give you a gentleman's request, and maybe that might work. And if you show that, then we might be open to some additional signage on the north side of the building to allow for the branding that you're looking for that southbound traffic. Again, we want to be reasonable, but I can't vote in favor for an illuminated sign at this height in the city of Mequon. I can't. It doesn't fit. You're not in town center. You don't have the specific zoning. You're by Port Road and all the other businesses in there. Nobody else has a sign to that height, nor is there a real reason to do it except for the fact that you want to stand out more than the next person. And that's exactly what the sign code's designed to limit, is exactly what you're trying to do with that sign at that height. So I apologize to you. And again, you know, reiterating what Commissioner Parrish says, I mean, you're a great business in the city of Mequon, and I'm sorry this is such a hard process, but again, a sign at that height just doesn't fit, and I'm talking about that point, not the fact that you wouldn't be welcome in Mequon or whatever. I appreciate the reinvestment in Mequon with the building. I just can't support the signage.
Your, you said your motion was to deny, but did you want to add anything in there about corporate art in the?
Nope.
So you just want an empty tower?
I think at this point, we've got so much invested in staff time that if they come back forward, I mean, staff's gonna at least need a reapplication fee at this point. I mean, we've legislated on the fly, we've tabled it 3 times. They're not listening to what we've said or what staff does. If they want to come back forward with something else, they can come back forward in another process.
I'm okay denying it. I just wish you would, you know, so I'll make a friendly amendment that we should have we can deny it with corporate art.
What's corporate art?
I just don't
Or
want
some sort of art feature. It can't be an empty tower. It's going to look ridiculous.
Well, and that's where I don't think we're being clear to them. Now we're saying we don't want anything in there. Last month, we said we didn't
gave them the
like it.
chance to come forward with
Didn't
it
like it at
2
all
months
with
in a row, and
nothing.
they came forward with a reverse
It is
logo
tiring.
version of what came
We've
forward
done
in the
this
first version.
repeatedly. People are frustrated, but, you know, let's stick to the process and end up with a nice project. Not an empty,
Well,
not
if
an
you're
empty
gonna-
tower.
If you're going to deny it, then you really shouldn't put conditions on the denial. It should be just a denial. The option would be to approve it with conditions, but it wouldn't make sense to deny the request and then put conditions with it. So the denial should be just a blanket denial.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Mayor.
Sorry.
I'm sure you could design something else to go in there because this is a 4-sided cube with the logo on it. It's a sign. But I'm sure you could design something else to go in there that wouldn't look so big and,
So I apologize, so this is the first time that I've heard about CFP natural material. Like, it's on me. What I thought I heard you saying originally was that if it's a natural material, then you're fine with it. So again, if we can make it stone, something.
We were talking more like a sculpture or something like that in the last meeting, you know, and just throwing out ideas on the fly, which is not the way we should legislate, but trying to help out and give some suggestions.
You can't just manufacture a piece of art that's representative of our logo either. I don't know. That's not anything else. When you do, logos are logo.
Right.
The challenging thing about the logo is if you try to make it a 3-dimensional thing, it looks backwards to half of the people that are seeing it. So that's not something that would be supported.
And Rob, with all due respect, you know, you made some of the final comments of the last meeting.
Sure.
And what you actually said was show the Associated Bank logo in the tower out of a cool material such as wood, metal, steel, and artistically lit.
Okay.
That's what you said. So, you know, we read the minutes, we dissected them, and it's not wood, but, you know, I think that
not
Rika
either
thinks
of the
they
three.
designed it out of a cool material, and you did support a logo in the tower at the last meeting.
I
And
think
so
you heard
you're
what
sending a different message to us now.
I think you heard what you wanted to hear.
Rob,
On that, I mean,
Rob,
it's
I
still
watched
in a-
the-
it's still
I
an
watched the
acrylic
video
box.
twice, Rob. I watched the video twice. I wrote down everything you said.
This isn't an ongoing debate. We're not going to bicker back and forth. That's not how this commission runs.
Ms. Tollefson wants to speak?
Well, anything that represents signage, I mean, a logo, wording, anything is considered a sign and it's required to comply with the sign code. So the sign code's very specific about logos still being defined as a sign and are subject to all of the technical standards. So I hear a lot of debate over the design, even if the commission and the applicants could come to an agreement on whatever the design of that feature is. If it has any element of signage to it, you also have to grant a waiver. And you have to be able to specify what the hardship is. Throughout this whole conversation, I have not heard from any commissioners who support an element or from the applicants what the hardship is for granting a variance for the signage. So I want to remind everybody as we try to build towards consensus and or some sort of conclusion to this issue, you have to go on record of stating what the hardship is. I think staff finds that very difficult and challenging in this particular case. This structure is not even built.
Oh, I thought you were pointing at him.
I think I was corrected before. At the last meeting, did we say that we would accept this with signage on the east, no signage in the tower the same height, no lighting of the green band?
There were several comments made at the last meeting. There was no consensus on what the commission would accept. Those were basically discussion points that the applicant was meant to take away and come back with a resubmittal. Again, everybody's going to listen to the video or read the minutes and kind of interpret those comments the way they want to interpret it. And staff's interpretation may be different than the applicant or the commission's, but we just recall that there was a consensus that commissioners did not like the height of the tower, commissioners did not like it empty, and commissioners were willing to potentially compromise if some of those concerns were addressed. There was really no consensus that this design or the previous design would be acceptable.
I struggle with the height, but in fairness, I think the first time they came forward with the tower at this height, we said it was okay, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Yes,
It's
it's approved.
Okay, so I guess what I'm getting at is that it's a question to the applicant. If the tower stays the height it is, if the green band is not illuminated, if there's no marketing inside the tower and you have a sign on the east and I'm hearing a sign on the north, would that be acceptable?
To grant a waiver for a north wall sign, you would still need a waiver because that's a second wall sign. So that
I
would,
guess it comes down to what I'm suggesting trading the element in the tower, which we all seem to struggle with a sign facing north.
that is what was proposed last month.
But
They
last
came-
time they had something in the tower, though.
They had, they wanted to revisit the tower wall sign with their sign waiver for the north elevation wall sign in case the commissioners were not supportive of the second wall sign.
They're both additional, so they're not, you're trading two things that they're not allowed to have, basically. So they're only allowed to have the one, which is on the east facade.
And they can have a monument sign, which they don't seem to want.
Correct.
And if you didn't have a cube in the tower wouldn't have to be so tall. Which
But it can
opens up
be.
all
It
sorts
can
of
sit
other
there empty
design
and ugly.
possibilities, but that's not my job.
That's where we were at last month. If we say we don't like the cube and they build this building with nothing in the tower, are we happier with that?
Well, it's their fault, not ours.
Because it will
The
look
tower
heinous,
wouldn't need to
but-
be so high.
Right.
You have a pointy roof on it, which might look better. It's not my job.
So Rob made a motion, I would second it, and I would go back to what Kim said and what I guess I had mentioned earlier. I don't think there's a hardship here.
Okay.
For the record, we did state a hardship in our application. The hardship is we currently have a driveway to the north that we're agreeing to close as part of our site plan approval. And because we're closing that driveway, you won't see the Associated Bank signage until after you've passed the only driveway into the site. So there's no way to identify the building until after you've passed it.
If you had the north sign though, which you chose not to represent here.
Because staff told us to represent only one sign at this application.
A monument sign would provide that visibility.
I think, yeah. We're having
It's
the same
allowed per code.
conversation over and over.
The-
Your
the,
building's not built. There's ways to address it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Robin?
What is the motion again?
To deny
To deny.
both the illuminated green band as well as the tower element signage.
Can I ask a question? Obviously, there's been a lot of dialogue back and forth. What, has Commissioner Schaefer been involved in meeting and participating in conversations? I mean, would it be of some
I
benefit
haven't.
that either of us be part of that to get this resolved?
Sure.
I mean, I'll offer that. I mean, I think we want you here, but we're not getting there.
I think if I could speak for, for our side, what we're struggling with is we're sent away every month with direction that's not always 100% consistent, but with things like, well, make it more artistic. And respectfully, we believe that we've made it more artistic. So we come back before the board and they say, well, you know, to try to do this in front of a panel of you know, several individuals with diverse opinions, and to have this sort of 1 month period of time in between it, you know, what we propose to staff, if staff thinks it's artistic, does not mean that anybody on this board is going to think it's artistic. So I think the thing that we are struggling with is we're trying to meet what the board is asking us to do. We're trying to make everybody happy, as we've done all the way throughout this process. But you know, we're trying to also represent the bank's interests in branding the building, and somewhere in here there is a middle ground that the majority of people can support. The challenge of us trying to come back and guess what that's going to be month after month after month is extremely difficult. So I think we would welcome some increased input on what artistic means.
I mean, I think that's my point. There's at least two of us that might have a better sense of what the
Well, I guess I would say I think we have a fairly good sense of what you're looking for, and I don't believe this was a legitimate attempt to meet that. And we told them that, I believe, in this process. So I don't think it's been an issue of unclarity on what we think you're looking for. I think it's been more on their end of what they're trying to accomplish and try to work it into something that we would accept. And so I don't know how we're going to resolve this, but I mean, I do agree with Alderman Strelchek. We spent an inordinate amount of time on this project over the last few months, and I think we're struggling with it because we're not, there's a disconnect there, and I don't necessarily, I'm not sure how to solve it, but I think we're on the staff understands where the commission's coming from, and I believe if there was something that we would see that you would support, I think we would be able to determine that prior to the meeting.
Jack, and correct me if I'm wrong, you've recommended denial every single time the tower element signage has come forward.
Yes, I believe so.
So there's no surprise there.
And so perhaps with,
But Rob, you supported tower signage in the last meeting.
I did not support tower signage.
Go read,
not
go
argue.
watch the video,
Let's not
45,
argue.
I didn't
45.
support tower signage. I threw out a couple ideas of natural materials. Wood was
Showed
one
the-
of them.
showed
Not
the
gonna
Associated Bank
solve
logo
anything,
in the
Nate.
tower.
Just took cool as something that you wanted to put in there.
we're not going to solve anything with you two guys arguing, okay?
Watch the video, Rob.
Perhaps
I'm not voting in favor of
working
tonight.
with the two
Sorry.
architects on our panel here, maybe you can come up with a solution.
I mean, we started the discussion with you saying that you wanted to see natural material there. I was trying to make this point before. I mean, if that is instead of being white, if it's like the color of the wood panels that are on there. I just think that's.
I'm personally at the point where I'm kind of done talking about any signage at this height. So at this point forward, just to make it clear to everybody that's sitting there as you watch the minutes, I will vote no on anything that's signage at that height in that tower currently, because I've changed my mind. I just don't feel that you're going to come forward with something that the commission's going to approve or will try to approve just because we're trying to appease you and put something in that really doesn't fit. I just don't think that it fits, and I think you should take a different avenue at this point.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second to deny. Robin, call the roll.
Commissioner Becky Schaefer,
Aye.
Commissioner Parrish,
Aye.
Commissioner Lemke,
No.
Commissioner Jim Schaefer,
Aye.
Commissioner Chorin,
Aye.
Commissioner Hawley,
No.
Alderman Strelchek,
Aye.
Mayor Abendroth.
Aye,
Vote passes 6-2.
6-2. Hopefully, we can work this out. Get some help. We'll see you again. Pardon?
We retired in plenty of time.
Yeah, well, maybe they'll just wait till I'm gone and Rob's gone.
No. I'll be back.
I have announcements.
You do?
If we're ready for that section.
Yes, please.
All right, so next month, when you come in for your planning commission meeting, our city hall parking lot is going to be under construction. Construction is slated to begin next week. Our city hall parking lot is finally being constructed. We're gonna start to see some materials
won't
brought
be
in
parking there anymore.
this week, and some barricades brought in. So yes, as the mayor is pointing out, you will not be able to be parking in there. The contractor has agreed to open up as many parking stalls as possible whenever possible. So that will be very clear at Cedarburg Road whether or not you can drive in or not. We are going to try to make those parking spaces right in front of the front entrance of City Hall available whenever possible, including next week's Common Council meeting. So you may see some available parking right in the front, but for the most part, the back part will be closed between now and the end of August. Construction is slated to be completed by Labor Day. Street parking will be open, as well as parking at the library should you need it.
All right, thank you. That's a long time coming, right?
It is. I should also note that we are going to have a website available that's going to have parking plans available to the let me try that again. Parking plans available to the public, so that people know where they can park when they do come to City Hall. The pool will open around Memorial Day, so there's going to be pool users, baseball users, et cetera. So we are making efforts to get that information out to the public. Once it's available and ready, we will share that at Planning Commission as well.
Thank you, Bridget. Another announcement somebody put on here. This is my last meeting on the Planning Commission. I've been on lots of planning commissions throughout the years, and this one's my favorite. And staff is my favorite too. I mean, I've never been so happy. So I just want to thank you all for the time and effort that you've put into this. We've dealt with a lot of really interesting and occasionally contentious things, but I think you've all done a terrific job. So I'm really proud of the work that everyone here has done. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan.
You're so welcome. Motion to adjourn, or your next meeting is Monday, May 13th.
Well, Mayor, a couple of us just want to say a few things. We regret to say farewell to you as our mayor and certainly as our Planning Commission chair. Staff, and I think I'll say many after this conversation. Many of our customers have appreciated, or applicants have appreciated your leadership with regards to development activities in the community. I think you and your fellow commissioners, those that you appointed specifically, have presented a very engaged approach to the proposals that have come before you, as well as a very fair and balanced approach. And I think sometimes there's that contradiction between, high quality design and what business interests happen to be. But I think with this, under your leadership and with this group of commissioners, we've certainly gotten back to raising the level of high quality design. I think your history with the city and your knowledge of land use has been tremendously helpful. And we are definitely thankful for the support that you've provided to staff with our recommendations that are sometimes lengthy and detailed. We wish you nothing but the best, and thank you for all of your public service.
Thank you, Kim. And for those of you watching at home, you may have noticed, or maybe not, that the TV system is different today. It certainly is different for us here.
Makes us look
It's
better.
more automated with little things stuck on the wall, and so I hope it was a good experience for you. And
Hey, Mayor.
yes, sir.
Kim asked me to say two quick words for you. On behalf of the Planning Commission, first of all, we want to congratulate Marty for retiring, which we all just heard tonight. So the cat's out of the bag.
Retiring too?
You guys can hang out.
And I think the reason why they asked me to say something is just because I've been on Planning Commission now 7 years. I came on right after Mayor was appointed, or elected. He went to my daughter's Girl Scouts meeting, and I've heard that was his favorite event or kind of act as mayor. And to this day, we hear from the kids how it was their favorite Girl Scout event. And so just the fact that meant so much to him. He's really a man of the people, I wrote down, just because he really does try to look out for all of us, or has. And I don't even know what political party you are. I find you to be a very non-political person and just focused on development and what's best for everyone in Mequon. And as someone who's kind of a newcomer, only in the last 8 years, and then you have like the old guard and the new guard in Mequon, and I feel like on Planning Commission, we're just constantly, those two forces are butting heads. You have the old Mequon and then the new Mequon, and you've done a really nice job of like bridging that gap. And so I think we're always gonna be grateful to you for that. And congratulations.
Well, the old guard in Mequon would have mandated Williamsburg colonial building design, and we wouldn't have had that problem.
We all really respect you, and so does the staff, so congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, it's been an honor to serve with you. I ran a campaign against you because there was a seat open and I wanted the job. And I ran a campaign against a guy I really didn't know. And I'll say for the camera and for you tonight, getting to know you has been the best experience that I've had as an elected official. I've learned an absolute ton from you, and it's been an absolute honor to serve with you over these years. You're a gentleman. You are as unbiased as you say you are. You care about the people more than you're even willing to admit. And you admit that you do this for the people all the time. So that's just a really great feather in your cap. You're a gentleman to work with. You're professional. You work with staff exceptionally well. They've embraced you as a person. This entire commission tonight, even though we disagree, it's collaborative disagreement, and it's a respectful. You've held City Hall to a respectful level of disagreement and encouraged collaboration and back and forth discussion on topics we don't agree on. Tonight being a prime example. All of you are ladies and gentlemen, that serve here, and the choice to be on this commission was a choice of Mayor Abendroth. It's been an honor to serve with you, and I just wanted to thank you for your guidance and friendship over these years, and hopefully the city will continue to do as well with the foundation that you've set.
Hopefully. Thank you, Rob. Need a motion to adjourn.
You get to make
No.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Hit the gavel.
Yeah.